I want to ask you a question. Who's coaching you? Who's asking you the tough questions? Who's telling you, man, you're the common denominator to all of your issues and challenges? Who's telling you, man, all day long you become the magnetic pulse that attracts to you both good and bad? I want to be your life coach. I want to be the one that cheers you on to the finish line. I want to be the one that you ask the tough questions. And it doesn't mean that I have all the answers, but that means that you have a partner, someone who believes in you, not the you see right now, but the you can't imagine, the you that you are to become, the you were destined to be. I always say we both need the positive and the negative. It's not enough to have the knowledge of the matter, but we must have the wisdom as well. For wisdom settles it. And that's what I want to offer you as you join me on the Coach's Corner. I want to offer you the wisdom of the matter. Maybe it might be relationships, talking about our campaigns for more, for life, the dark room of our subconscious, our spiritual journey. Whatever it is, I want to be there to encourage you, to build you, to challenge you, to cheer you on to the finish line. I'm qualified to do this. Why? Because I'm you. Another good day to you, and welcome to the Coach's Corner right here on SIBN Radio. Today we want to talk about how to reduce the control others have on you. How to reduce the control that others have on you. First, let me say thank you so very much to those of you that are joining me right there on the Block website where our digital programming goes forth, www.sibnradio-by-select-usatv.com or www.415-96radio.com. Thank you to all those that are listening and watching on iBroadcast TV, those that are listening on iTunes, subscribing to SIBN Television and Radio in the podcast section. Thank you to my Spreaker followers, Twitter followers, and Facebook fans. I appreciate your listenership. Thank you for those that are starting to join www.we-support-select-usatv.com. Thank you also to the new audience of Blog Talk Radio. I would be remiss if I did not mention you, and you. Those of you that have believed in us from the beginning. Well, now you have it. DCC, the Coach's Corner. This is the Coach's Corner. How to reduce the control others have on you. All right, Mr. Engineer, thank you so very much. Let's get right to it. First of all, let's put a qualifier in there. The fact of the matter is we are all controlled by something at some time or another and by someone at one point or another. And if you don't agree with that, or if you try to say, well, I'm not controlled by anyone, I control my own destiny, well, you're not facing the real reality of the matter. We are all controlled by something or someone at some time or another, or at one point or another. When we talk about just general control, we hear one political party says that they don't want to have the federal government telling them what to do. And also we also hear the opposite party saying, well, we don't want the rich running around not taking responsibility for those who are less fortunate in our community. Trust me, I'm not here to take a political side. I'm here to get you to the finish line. The issue is whether we try to evade control or not, there is an element of control in all of our lives. And so the human way is to try to minimize who controls us. And I think one of the ways to minimize who controls us is to maximize our production and growth pattern. Failure to maximize our options to grow and failure to maximize our growth patterns cause us to fall into the forked hands, if you will. Bad analogy, right? Causes us to fall into the knives, the switchblades of control. I felt that right there. So it's important that before we get really deep into this, that you understand that, for instance, the yellow light, the red light, the green light controls your driving. The laws passed in your state legislature and your county ordinances control what you can do, where you can do it, referring to where you live. Just recently, the state of Georgia decided that every 16 years they would require those who drive in the state and hold a driver's license to furnish proof of their birth, their citizenship, and their social security number. And so every 16 years, you're going to have to bring in official documents as to your existence in the United States of America. Now, I promise you that has long-standing consequences, though they may be trying to eradicate fraud with the driver's license and so forth and so on. It still has a consequence later on to the advantage of another. In other words, it's still an element of control. I felt that. As well as they just changed another law that says if you want to opt out of the ad valorem tax on your license plate, you can do X, Y, and Z and pay up to 6% of the value of the, so forth and so on. Another element of control. And while some laws seem to be friendly on the front side, they have control mechanisms on the back side. Well, today I just want to paint a picture of how to reduce the control others have on you in our leisure, in our relationships, in our day-to-day business networking. I'm no expert on the topic, but as I say, assuredly, I did say it at the beginning, I have my own personal and professional issues, and I bring to the table some wisdoms on the matter. First of all, let me just say this. You don't want to keep leaving the expectation of your happiness to others. And we'll start right there, right where we live. We have to stop leaving the fulfillment, is a better way to say it, of our happiness to others. Once I said it may be a good thing or not, but once I said maybe perhaps we should lower, not our values, not our ethics, but lower our expectations so that we are not so often disappointed. What do you think about that? Because we have these expectations and we have them based on the reference from whence we come, the environments from which we have experiences. And so therefore we get into these relationships, whether or not they be straight or gay, whether they not be up or down, whether or not they be legal or not. We get into these, whether they not be they spiritual, or physical, you feel me? We get into these relationships and we are expecting someone else to fulfill our cup of happiness. And anytime we have a high expectation of someone else fulfilling an action based on a reference that we have psychosocially back to our past environment, we give them inadvertently the control over us, though they may not have asked for it. But we have offered them the control because I expect you to give me X, Y, and Z on my anniversary because my parents or my grandfather or my auntie and their couple, the couple that was on our street or what have you, did X, Y, and Z. We have all kinds of expectations, and that's why we're constantly disappointed. But we have less the funny thing about it is we have less expectations on ourselves and more expectations on others. Why don't you flip the script? Put the expectations that you have high on others on yourself, and then you'll find out that you will not be as disappointed as you once were. You can almost stop, bring to a screeching halt the disappointments and the frustrations that you feel from having all these expectations on others, because some around you, though they may be in covenant with you, and though they may love you, and though they may aspire to bless you, they may not have the capacity to fulfill what it is you expect. And so hence, by you having them high on the pedestal to fulfill some happy ending for some end goal, you inadvertently give them control over you. This is a topic that I'm constantly discovering even more. I mean, that's one of the reasons why we should finish processes. When you hear somebody say, well, finish school, or finish your GED program, or finish the counseling sessions and the therapy sessions, finish what you started. We hear that because when we stick to a regimen, it teaches us about control, and it teaches us also about personal confidence and what we can achieve in and of ourselves once we put our minds to the task and we do not divert because of some legitimate or illegitimate emergency. Control that others have on us also, we find the lever of it through fear. I had wanted to make sure I wrote this down, other than the fact that I said stop leaving your happiness to others. I had put in my notes, which I rarely do. Most of the time when I come to the mic, I come straight from my heart. But I wanted to make sure I wrote this down. Once you are afraid of risk, you're subject to the control of others who will risk everything to get what they want. Once you are afraid of risk, there are many of you listening to me, you are afraid of risk. In other words, your safety net in life is security. You want to feel secure. You don't ever want to feel a threat of any kind of wind coming from the north, south, or the east or west. You don't want to feel. You want strict security. I need to know that my bills can be paid based on the money that's coming. That's an example, by the way. I don't buy used cars. I only buy new. Security. Okay. I don't date people without a job. Security. I felt that right there. You see what I'm saying? You could miss one of the biggest blessings in your life because you're hooked on security. I'm just saying, don't throw the ethics and values out of the window, but we're talking about control here. We're talking about control on both sides of the coin. But once we are afraid of risk of any kind, and the valuation of that risk, we're not saying that you should not have the proper valuation of the risk. We're not saying you should not have the proper management of risk. But some have just completely opt out of risking completely. You've opted out. There's a wall up. You will not step out of the boat. You won't step out of the comfort zone. You have great excuses. You have intelligent reasons why you cannot move over to the left side of the aisle or the right side of the aisle, if we was to use a political phrase or terminology. You won't move. And inadvertently, once again, fear then brings a greater control of circumstances and those within those circumstances and environments over your life. They didn't ask for it either. I think we tend to take too many things personally. Myself, that's just something I'm learning about myself. We take too many things personally. People have control, and they didn't know, and they didn't ask for the control. And then there are others who are fighting for control of your life, of your behavior, of your patterns, of your expectations, of your disciplines. They're fighting for control everywhere you turn. But people who are afraid of risk are subject by one way or another to the control of others who will risk everything to get their way. It's like a parent. If you're afraid of risk as a parent, in other words, you're afraid to correct, you're afraid to direct, you're afraid to discipline, you're afraid to challenge your child in a particular area of confrontation, some controversial area. then the child will inadvertently control you as the parent, because the child will risk everything to get what they want in that moment. And also keep in mind that momentary indecision to accept, value, manage risk puts you at the mercy of those who are willing to risk everything. It's like an auction. If you go to an auction, if you've ever been a part of an auction, and the auctioneer begins. I remember when I used to do bidding and go to auctions and things of that nature. And then he goes, all right, on this item, we're going to start our bid at $100. Now, if you know that you're not going to bid, at the starting point or above, just don't bid. But don't show your fear on the floor. Man, I tell you, you want a great experience, man. Get on the auction floor and get into a bidding war and learn on the spot, in the moment of power and acquisition. You would really learn something, But, and then he says, well, we have the next item and we're going to start at $25. And so you begin to bid, Let's just say it's something you really want. And this leads to my third point for today. Something that you really want, but you never, this is what I want to say, how to reduce the control others have on you. Stop appearing desperate. They bring an item to the floor for auction. You have been waiting for this item, but you have to watch your demeanor, your posture. You have to watch your emotions right then and there in that moment. You have to watch the floor. Who else is bidding, how they're bidding. You have to watch who the auctioneer may know on the floor versus who he does not know. Oh, my goodness. You want to talk about an experience about how to manipulate your way out of the control of a high bidder? Yeah, that's something to see, you see. You never show your fear. You never hesitate. And you bid. And I can't really tell you how to do it because you have to be in that moment. But one thing I can tell you that you shouldn't do not appear desperate. The only person you should be desperate for is the Lord, maybe. You know what I'm saying? But other than that, if you show desperation, the control of others will bring separation from what you aspire to achieve. I felt that. One of the things that I have learned about the poor is they're always desperately in need. And so therefore, there are always those who are there to rescue and to help and to manage and to give them what they need, and have already plotted and planned and based studies that they will need it again at a certain time again. This is also control. This is also control. For instance, if you're going to WIC and there's I'm talking about WIC where you receive, milk for, so as a supplement for families who have children, newborns and whatnot. You go to WIC to get your cheese and your milk. All of a sudden, you're getting 5 gallons of milk. It's more milk than you could handle, but, then you go back and all of a sudden the whole set of rules change. And you're caught on the thicket because now you must comply with a new set of rules to continue to get the milk. Hence, the control mechanisms have changed to increase the amount of control, and now you have a greater burden in order to get the product or the service. See, we're all under some type of control somewhere, but in our relationships, we appear too desperate in all of them, whether it be parent, child, or mother, daughter, father, son, friend to friend, husband to wife, wife to husband, boyfriend, girlfriend. Too desperate. We're too desperate. We put out too much desperation in the air, if you will. We can't be desperate. In other words, we have to be willing to show, watch this now, that we are willing to walk away without what appears to be the answer to what would get us to our end goal. Are you willing to live without it, but knowing you have it through another venue, another pathway, another journey, another avenue? Or are you going to be so desperate for it? Desperate for your way is another way to look at it. You're desperate to have it your way. Now, there may be times where desperation plays a part. The absence of hesitation will be to your advantage. But overall, we got to find a center somewhere. If we're going to reduce the control that others have on us, we have to learn to find the center. And hence is where the wisdom is. This is where the wisdom is. This is where we fall short, because we praise one another on the intelligences that we display and the articulation of our position, but very few of us possess the wisdom of the matter to know how to wait, to know how to be silent, to know how to walk away, to know how to play our hand to the advantage where we don't appear to be desperate. Very few of us can do that. And in my life, and of course in your life, because you're listening, we're learning how to reduce the control. Now, one of the ways you can reduce the control, when we were talking about the traffic laws and other things, is to comply with the rules and the regulations of the road. For instance, with driving, comply. If you're in compliance, you don't have to worry about someone else, because behind every violation are further controls. Now, I felt that right there. Behind every write that down. If I'm going to start encouraging my listeners to take notes, because if you're not taking notes, you're missing out on a lot of stuff, because the mind remembers more when you commit it to paper than when you try to commit it to memory. I felt that. Behind every violation are greater controls. So while it may seem that we may argue politically, economically, socially, religiously about the rules and regulations, whether it be church or political persuasion, party, whatever the case may be, but behind every violation, behind every moral violation, behind every ethical violation, behind every legal violation are more control mechanisms. So another way to reduce the control that others may have over us is to make sure that we are in compliance with the rules and regulations of the entity or the activity that we are engaged in. Now that hits the core for a lot of people, because their whole lives are centered around getting around the rules, and they end up running into more trouble, and they are under more control restraints, and then they have more agitation, which leads them to further behavioral outburst, which leads to further violation, which leads to further control mechanisms imposed. But as it regards to relationships, as I bring this to a close, is this: we got to stop leaving our happiness to other people. We got to stop expecting other people to fulfill what we can fulfill. We've got to surprise people and be willing to walk away from the prize sitting on the table, because so often more than not, people present the answer that we need for the control that they want. And they themselves may not even realize that they want control, because many people grew up in a variety of dynamic home environments, and so we don't never know the algorithms of patterns that will emerge sometimes. Now, if you're in therapy and you're a social analyst or psychologist or psychotherapist, you may be able to know those algorithms, but the average person doesn't know the algorithms of behavioral patterns that will, if you put this with this, you will get that. The average person is not thinking like that. But what I can tell you is this: standing on your own 2 feet, willing to take the hit, willing to count your gains as losses. These are other mechanisms of how to look at reducing the control others have on you. You see, we get so exuberant about a win that then we now enter toward consciousness of what seems to be excitement and exuberation. But and celebration, but it thrusts us backwards rather than forwards, because we count too many of our gains as gains and not our gains as losses. You know, Paul said that in the Bible. He says, I count all that I have learned, all that I have won, all that I've gained as a loss that I might win. And until you get to that place of wisdom, you never really reduce the control others have on you. You have to count every gain as a loss to win. But then we're so plastic, we so boast about the gains, and that really reveals the intent of who we are, because we start boasting and we start, a little boasting may be okay, but we just go off and then we want more approval. Then we get more friends based on acquisitions and on and on and on. And all of a sudden we've forgotten and we've slipped into a pattern that algorithm of pattern. In other words, the equation therein of that pattern behavior reflects past consciousness that increases the control of others on us. We've got to get to a place, and the other thing I wanted to say is this: because we have interdependence needs. In other words, we're not independent, but we're independent, but yet we're interdependent upon one another. In other words, we don't want to need people, but then we still need people. You feel me? We don't want to need anybody, but then we almost need everybody. Well, how do you don't need people and then yet need people? You learn to stand on your own 2 feet. You learn to take the hit. You learn to take the pain. You don't count your gains as gains. You count your gains as losses to win. Perfect example, you meet a young man. If you're looking for a young man, you don't look at him as a prospect. You look at him as a human being. I'm going to treat him with dignity and respect. I'm going to treat him like I would want to be treated. In other words, you remove the expectation and you apply your personal moral and ethical dedication. Remove the expectation. I talk about that all the time. Practicing opposite behavior modification, OBM. Remove the expectation. See, that's the problem. We're too predictable. And when you become predictable, you become expendable. And when you become expendable, all control mechanisms have won. You got to get mad sometimes too. You got to say, okay, what do I need to do differently? If you're not willing to do something differently, then guess what? You would not have a different outcome. And once there again, you would have increased the control others have on you, because you're not willing to risk anything. Are you willing to risk how you feel? Are you willing to risk how you see it? Are you willing to risk, maybe money may be involved, maybe travel may be involved? How to reduce, and then you can think about this title and write your own notes. How to reduce the control others have on you. Can you do it? One way is not to leave our happiness to others. Lower the expectation and put in place our personal dedication to the human spirit. Another way is to not fear risk. It's okay if I step out of my comfort zone, because that's the only way I'm going to find out new things. If I stay here where everything I know is familiar and everyone that knows me is familiar, I will never grow. I will never immerse out of or out from under the control of these nagging forces that continue to beat me down, so I think. And then sometimes the control that others have on you is to push you to an independence that you have feared anyway. Get you to stand on your own 2 feet. Be proud of yourself and have confidence and personal integrity that you did the hard work and you were not afraid and you did not ask for a handout, and you did not ask for any help. Now, if you need help and somebody offers you help and you accept help, that's good. But you realize, I still can do this on my own. Follow me if you can. It's the coach.